Now, as you've learned, Class G is the only class of uncontrolled airspace in the U.S., and there is no Class F. So let's take a look at controlled airspace, starting with the most common and least restrictive level, and that is Class E, and the easy way to remember that is elsewhere. Class E is all the other controlled airspace that is not designated as either Class Delta, Charlie, Bravo, or Alpha. You'll find Class E airspace at some altitude everywhere in the U.S. Aeronautical charts show the boundaries where the floor of Class E airspace changes. Now, Class E with a floor of 1,200 feet AGL is shown by the fuzzy side of the blue here. But sometimes Class E has a floor higher than 1,200 feet. In that case, they will print the floor of the Class E airspace right here on the fuzzy side of the blue vignette. And you can see here that it's 5,500 feet MSL. Now take a look at this tire tread-like symbol here. Well, when you get on the other side of it over here, that tells you that the floor of controlled airspace is back down to 1,200 feet because there is no number in here like there was out here. Now, if you take a look at the fuzzy side of magenta, the fuzzy side of magenta means that the floor of controlled airspace is 700 feet AGL. Now, the purpose of that Class E airspace down to 700 feet AGL is to allow an IFR airplane to climb and descend and still be in controlled airspace and have separation service from ATC. Eventually, this IFR airplane will want to land. So this magenta dashed line right here says that Class E airspace comes all the way down to the ground inside that magenta dashed line. And that's called a Class E surface area. Now, let's you and I back off and take a look at the structure of Class E airspace. First of all, we said Class G, or uncontrolled airspace, goes from the surface up to a maximum altitude of 14,500 feet MSL. That's because in the lower 48 states and Alaska, everything above 14,500 MSL at and above is controlled airspace. So if Class E airspace does not start at a lower altitude, it will always start at 14,500 feet MSL. Now, sometimes you'll see the fuzzy side of the blue, and the fuzzy side of the blue in general means that the floor of controlled airspace is 1,200 feet AGL. But remember, in the eastern U.S., you will not see the fuzzy side of the blue. You'll just take it as a given that the floor of controlled airspace is 1,200 feet AGL. If you do see a fuzzy side of the blue with a different number, that tells you that the floor of controlled airspace is higher than the normal 1,200 feet AGL. Now, when you see the fuzzy side of magenta, that means that you have a floor of Class E airspace at 700 feet AGL. And then, when you see the magenta dashed lines, that means that the Class E airspace goes down to the ground in a Class E surface area. Now, that Class E surface area provides separation service for IFR flights all the way down to the ground. But they can only do that when air traffic control communications and weather reporting are available. For instance, if the person who reports the weather goes home for the night, then that Class E surface area moves up to a floor of 700 feet AGL. Now, for VFR aircraft, there are no communications or equipment requirements to fly in Class E airspace. You can fly in here all the time. You do have increased weather minima, which we'll talk about later, so you need to watch out for them. But as far as communications and equipment requirements for VFR flights, there are none. Now, can you get any ATC service as a VFR airplane in Class E airspace? Well, on a workload permitting basis, when controllers have the time to do so, they might give you safety alerts and traffic advisories. But Class E airspace does not require you to have communication in order to fly VFR. Now let's you and I take a look at Class E airspace as it might appear to a pilot in the air. First of all, some Class E airspace has a floor higher than 1,200 feet AGL, and you can see that by the fuzzy side of the blue with a number inside it. Then most Class E airspace has a floor of 1,200 feet, and that's the fuzzy side of the blue. Now, when you get near the airport, you may have Class E airspace with a floor of 700 feet AGL, and that is the fuzzy side of the magenta. Then at the airport itself, Class E airspace will often go all the way to the ground, and that's shown with the magenta dashed lines. So as you take a look at this from the end, you get the whole picture. You have the floor of controlled airspace, 1,200 feet AGL on the fuzzy side of the blue, 700 feet AGL on the fuzzy side of the magenta, and finally the Class E surface area shown by the magenta dashed lines. Now when you see Class E airspace, think elsewhere, because it's all the other controlled airspace that is not designated as a higher level of airspace.